Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents God's Grandeur, The Catholic Case for Intelligent Design. Edited by Anne Gauger, Ph.D. Narrated by Nan Mcnamara. For from the greatness and beauty of created things comes a corresponding perception of their Creator. Wisdom, chapter 13, verse 5. Preface. Chapter 1. God's Grandeur, The Catholic Case for Intelligent Design. Anne Gauger. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil crushed. Why do men then now not reck his rod? Gerard Manley Hopkins. The world, indeed the universe, is charged with grandeur. Everything speaks of beauty, power, and purpose, of design, the elegant relationships of the laws of physics, the stunning elemental properties that permit life, the sophisticated ways of living things, and the interdependence of the biosphere all reveal the hand of a designer. This should come as no surprise to believers in God. The three great monotheistic religions all acknowledge God as creator of all things. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, Scripture says, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. This can be clearly seen, the Apostle Paul declares, so we are without excuse, because God's works reveal his nature and power. See Romans chapter 1, verse 20. Scripture also says that when God created human beings, he created them in his own image and likeness, male and female, and it was very good. Pope Benedict XVI put it this way: we are not some casual and meaningless product of evolution. Each of us is the result of a thought of God. Each of us is willed. Each of us is loved. Each of us is necessary. Man's refusal. Clearly, though, many do not acknowledge this, despite the grandeur of creation. Victorian-era poet and priest Gerard Manley Hopkins raises the necessary question, why do men then now not reck, that is, have regard for, his rod? Why do they not recognize God's power and his tremendous gift in creation? This question is both profound and urgent. Unbelief is not new, but it is omnipresent now. And it must be said that this is in large part due to the influence of radical materialism in our culture, not the kind that urges us toward the endless accumulation of goods, but the kind that claims we are nothing more than molecules in motion, matter, and energy. Scientific materialism, as it is called, denies anything immaterial, including the soul, goodness, truth, beauty, free will, and God. Everything is self-defined and relative. There is no ground of being, no ultimate cause, no reason. The universe is meaningless, the product of blind, purposeless forces. Says atheist evolutionary biologist Richard Dawkins, the universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if there is at bottom no design, no purpose, no evil and no good, nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. One charge brought against God is that he is unnecessary. Physics and cosmology can explain the universe's existence and fine-tuning. Purely unguided natural processes can explain the wondrous forms of life, past and present. And we humans are the product of blind evolutionary processes that did not have us in mind. Our young people are taught this doctrine in school, often with an overt challenge to religious belief. The materialist doctrine is also preached by nearly all secular media. I write this to you as a scientist and a Catholic. It disturbs me that science should be used to deny purpose and meaning and everything immaterial. It angers me that it is used as an argument against God, when it is clear to me that science, rightly understood, points toward God, not away from him, and evidence of his design is everywhere. Science as challenge to faith. Unfortunately, It is not only materialist scientists who deny nature's intelligent design. Many Catholic proponents of evolution are convinced that the evidence for evolution is profound and undeniable. They simultaneously deny that there is any evidence of intelligent design. This is a curious thing. Evolution is an ambiguous word. It can mean change over time, as in, over time the population of bacteria evolved antibiotic resistance, an unexceptional, observable statement of fact. One also hears statements that claim common ancestry between groups. Dogs, foxes, and wolves are all evolved from a common ancestor. This statement is based on the idea that similarity implies ancestral relatedness, an idea that predated Darwin. Neither of these statements is intrinsically inimical to the faith. Change over time and common ancestry can be argued from the fossil record and the record in our genomes. However, neither record conclusively reveals which processes might be responsible, either evolution or intelligent design, or a combination of the two. Provided one acknowledges that God guided the evolutionary process in some manner, Catholics are free to accept common descent, with one exception: the creation of man. We are all descendants of two first parents, monogenesis. Further, God directly creates each human soul at the moment of conception. This will be discussed in more detail in the chapter on human origins. So, why would some Catholics deny the detectable design of creation? I believe it is because it goes against scientific orthodoxy. They would rather find a theological workaround or reinterpret theology entirely than find themselves on the wrong end of the evolutionary biologist's stick. To handle the cognitive dissonance, Catholics like biologist Kenneth Miller, a Brown University professor, opt out of orthodoxy. Miller has said that if the tape of evolution were run forward again, events might come out differently at every turn. He expands on this unorthodox thought by opining, "Surely this means that mankind's appearance on this planet was not preordained, that we are here not as the products of an inevitable procession of evolutionary success, but as an afterthought, a minor detail, a happenstance in a history that might just as well have left us out." John Haught, a theologian at Georgetown University, has taken it a step further by embracing evolution as a way for God to let the universe participate in its own creation. A creator who makes a world that can make itself is much more deserving of our reverence than one who holds the world on puppet strings. An unrestrained imposition of divine design would, in effect, leave no room for anything other than God, no room for a world at all. A world that is perfectly designed from the outset would be incompatible with the biblical notion of creation. In fact, the whole thrust of biblical literature is to have us look for perfection not in the world's past or present, but in its future. The creation is not a design, but a promise that turns the emergence of matter, life, and mind into a dangerous but magnificent story. Known as process theology, Haught's view smacks more of panentheism than Catholicism. It is also reminiscent of Teilhard de Chardin, who was a Jesuit priest, mystic, and paleontologist. Chardin was not a theologian, it must be noted, and his passionate writings about a new way to interpret the gospel in the light of evolution drew fire. His writing was suppressed by the Church and still viewed as heterodox by many. Yet, from my limited reading, it is clear he was a man of deep devotion to Christ. He saw all of material creation aflame with God and growing toward perfection in God through human cooperation with God. For him, the figure of Christ had three natures: the human and divine in the Incarnation, and the cosmic, the omega point, toward which all things converged. I am no theologian either, but to me the traditional Christian view of Christ being both fully human and fully God makes any notion of a cosmic Christ superfluous. Teilhard de Chardin died in 1955, only 2 years after the discovery of the structure of DNA. He knew nothing of the marvels of molecular biology that have been revealed in the last 70 years. How he would revel in the glories seen in nature now. Other philosophers and scientists, including Edward Feser and Stephen Barr, declare that intelligent design theory is at odds not just with science, but also with Thomas Aquinas and metaphysics. They claim that Aquinas' teaching on primary and secondary causation allows the acceptance of evolution. Full stop. God holds all in his hands, but he allows all things to act according to their natures as secondary causes of their own change over time. This means that God ordained evolution as the means by which life came to be what it is today, but also that if he guided the random processes of evolution, he did so in such a way that his action was indistinguishable from blind material processes. Therefore, design is not detectable. Thomist philosophers who make this argument against intelligent design also accuse the theory of being mechanistic and of denying Thomistic ideas of form, substance, and accident. Whew! We address these arguments in chapters by theologian Michael Kabarick, O.P., biologist Richard von Sternberg, and philosopher J.W. Richards. Briefly, the position of neo-Thomists who reject intelligent design relies on a philosophical dodge, namely, an equivocal definition of randomness. Scientists say that evolution is the result of random processes, winnowed by natural selection. By random, scientists mean unguided, without regard to the needs of the organism. They don't mean apparently random, yet guided by God. It should also be pointed out that even God cannot guide an unguided, random process. Quantum indeterminacy is no help. Refer to philosopher Robert C. Koons's chapter, Design and Teleology. Also, this disagreement with intelligent design hinges on a faulty reading of Aquinas. I offer a few additional comments. The first and most obvious is that theistic evolutionists are baptizing a theory first composed by Darwin as a substitute for the doctrine of special creation, and intended to take the place, at least regarding the living world, of God the Creator. This theory is not toothless, yet theistic evolutionists are doubling down on their commitment to evolution precisely at a time when many mainstream scientists have begun to question the efficacy of unguided evolution to account for life. Sadly, their unquestioning acceptance of evolutionary theory in its entirety undermines the faith, as explained in the following. Evolution and Creation. Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI, writing when he was Cardinal Ratzinger in his book In the Beginning, 1990, connected the loss of creation theology to loss of faith in the Scriptures and the Church. In fact, a theologian said not long ago that creation has now become an unreal concept. If one is to be intellectually honest, one ought to speak no longer of creation, but rather of mutation and selection. Are these words true? One answer was already worked out some time ago. It says that the Bible is not a natural science textbook, nor does it intend to be such. One must distinguish between the form of portrayal and the content that is portrayed, and its purpose ultimately would be to say one thing: God created the world. I believe that this view is correct, but it is not enough. And so the suspicion grows that ultimately perhaps this way of viewing things is only a trick of the Church and of theologians who have run out of solutions. For one can ask, if theologians or even the Church can shift the boundaries here between image and intention, between what lies buried in the past and what is of enduring value, why can they not do so elsewhere, as for instance, with respect to Jesus' miracles? Such an operation often ends up by putting the faith itself in doubt, by raising the question of the honesty of those who are interpreting it, and of whether anything at all there is enduring. As far as theological views of this sort are concerned, finally, quite a number of people have the abiding impression that the Church's faith is like a jellyfish. No one can get a grip on it, and it has no firm center. It is on the many half-hearted interpretations of the biblical word, which can be found everywhere, that a sickly Christianity takes its stand, a Christianity which is no longer true to itself, and which consequently cannot radiate encouragement and enthusiasm. It gives instead the impression of being an organization that keeps on talking, although it has nothing else to say, because twisted words are not convincing and are only concerned to hide their emptiness. Theistic evolution is not a peripheral matter. It affects how we view ourselves, and that in turn affects how seriously we take the words of Scripture. I notice that every Easter Vigil Mass, the highest of High Holy Days, the first few readings are the first 3 chapters of Genesis. The Church unites the first Adam in Genesis with the second Adam, Christ, in the resurrection, to emphasize who we are destined to be. Think of it. We are destined to be with God forever and share in the fullness of His joy. We are not meat machines. We are not souped-up apes. We are not determined by our genes or our upbringing, unable to choose right or wrong. We are children of God, made in His image. We have a purpose in life. We have intellects and souls and free will. We are able to grow in knowledge about the deep mysteries of the universe in which we live, because it is intelligible to us. We are rational beings, and the world is ordered for discovery. These are things we profess as Catholics. These are things for which evolutionary biology cannot give an account. At some point, we must face the issue honestly. Materialist evolution and some forms of theistic evolution are not in line with the teachings of the Church. Rather, science shows that the world is the creation of an intentional and intelligent designer. Outline of this book. The scope of what can be drawn from the theme of design and creation is vast. We have chosen subjects most relevant to our theme, that is, how materialist evolution contradicts Catholic teaching on creation, and how intelligent design confirms it. To eliminate some possible confusions at the outset, in the introduction, philosopher Logan Paul Gage clarifies what we mean by design and what we don't. The chapters that follow are organized into 3 main sections. The first section examines the scientific evidence for intelligent design. We present evidence from cosmology and the origin of life, physicist Brian Miller, paleontology, paleontologist Gunter Beckley, and biology, biochemist Michael Behe and biologist Anne Gager, that reveal the necessity of a designer. We discuss what human nature and Catholic teaching reveal about our origin and how Catholic teaching may fit with scientific evidence. In the second section of the book, we consider the philosophical arguments about design and evolution. We discuss teleology, how things are made for a purpose, how it contradicts materialism, as well as any idea that God had no knowledge of how things would turn out, philosopher Robert C. Koons. We consider the philosophy of mind, Dr. Michael Egnor, the distinctiveness of the human person, Dr. Scott Venturera, natural law, philosopher Benjamin Weicker, moral law, philosopher J. Budyshevsky, the intelligibility of nature, Benjamin Weicker, and the existence of beauty as a transcendental, Logan Paul Gage. In the final section, we discuss what theology says about the design of nature. We highlight that Scripture is full of references to God's design, theologian John Bergsma, and the glory of God revealed in creation, Father Pedro Barrajon, L.C. We engage the argument by theistic evolutionists and others who claim that God's design is hidden and cannot be detected, Father Michael Kabarek, O.P., biologist and philosopher Richard von Sternberg, and philosopher J.W. Richards. We offer a challenge to the Church on why she needs to embrace the debate over intelligent design, not suppress it. Bruce Chapman. The concluding chapter of the book, Dr. Anthony Esolen, offers a broad vision of nature that abandons reductive materialism and embraces the reality that nature is much more like a living symphony than a machine, a formula, or a random collision of atoms. The listener may choose the chapters of most interest or listen from beginning to end. Some chapters are more technical than others. This volume brings together in one place arguments from some of the best minds in Catholicism, arguments against materialism, and in support of God's intentional design in all created things, in a form that anyone can appreciate. The clarity brought by viewing each subject through the lens of design is bracing. Beauty takes her rightful place, philosophy shines her light, and theology's magnificence is revealed. Biology, no longer mistress, is handmaid, and physics and chemistry announce God's wonders. Christian anthropology reveals the mystery of grace. And like children, we sweep away the dust and cobwebs and find every kind of plenitude beneath. Introduction. Chapter 2. Understanding Design Arguments. Logan Paul Gage. Introduction. In my experience, Catholics face many challenges when it comes to thinking about evolution and intelligent design. Many of us somewhere along the way had a priest or teacher tell us not to trouble ourselves about this issue. Whatever science says is fine. In addition, there is even some confusion over the very meaning of the terms evolution and intelligent design. In this chapter, I aim to help us think more carefully and critically about these ideas. Without worrying yet about whether design arguments are sound, we must first figure out what these arguments claim, and just as importantly, what they do not claim. To this end, I will provide some background, attempt to define our terms, discuss the form of such arguments, and consider common Catholic misconceptions. My hope is that we will then be in a better place to evaluate the success of such arguments in the following chapters. An ancient dialectic. For many American Catholics, discussions of evolution and intelligent design dredge up images of the Scopes monkey trial, or fundamentalist Christians attempting to have literal six-day creationism taught in public schools. While most of us Catholics are uncomfortable with the aggressive evolutionary atheism of Richard Dawkins and the New Atheists, we don't feel that we have much of a dog in such fights. Yet, we can be too hasty in this regard. The fundamental debate is not of recent vintage. The West has long had two dominant narratives about where our world's astonishing and beautiful creatures come from: accidental events or intelligent foresight. These narratives not only predate fundamentalist Christianity, but Christianity itself. This issue pushes all the way down to fundamental metaphysics. What is the self-existent ultimate reality? Impersonal matter or a personal creator? As far back as Socrates in the 5th century BC, we see the father of Western philosophy making an explicit design argument. His student Xenophon records Socrates' view that we have been most favored by the supreme deity. We are uniquely arranged in body and mind. All other things appear to be here for our benefit, and nature itself seems consistently arranged in the best or finest way. All of this, Socrates argues, bears witness to divine providence. Variations on this basic theme appear in his successors Plato and Aristotle, and beyond. The opposing narrative came from the Greek atomists like Democritus, Leucippus, and Epicurus. Humans, they claimed, are intelligent, of course, but this intelligence is a late arrival on the scene. Ultimate reality isn't intelligent. What fundamentally exists are atoms and empty space in which the atoms collide. Just as you hear many today saying silly things like, "Love is just a chemical reaction in the brain," so too did the atomists believe that all phenomena really reduce down to the properties of material bodies. For the atomists, highly organized beings like ourselves self-organize by accident. There are an infinite number of worlds. So, with an infinite amount of time, every combination of atoms must manifest itself somewhere. Sure, organisms look intelligently designed, but poor accidental designs disappeared, while good accidental designs survived. There is truly nothing new under the sun. There are differences, to be sure, But the atomist narrative clearly anticipates not only Darwin's theory, but multiverse scenarios as well. The fundamental issue, all the way back, is whether the apparently designed features of our world are truly intelligently designed, or whether they can be accounted for by lucky accidents with no intelligence involved. As even Richard Dawkins recognizes, biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose. Like the atomists before him, of course, he thinks this design is only apparent and not real. What intelligent design is. With this classical dialectic in view, intelligent design, ID, proponents typically define intelligent design as the view that certain features of the universe and of living things are best explained by an intelligent cause rather than an undirected process. Note that this doesn't mean that no evolution has occurred, or that natural processes and forces don't have their place. It is rather the minimal claim that it's not natural processes and forces all the way down, a claim to which we Catholics are dogmatically committed, believing as we do that all things originate in God. Design proponents have made arguments for real rather than apparent design at different levels. For instance, they've argued that the beginning of the universe requires an intelligent cause, William Lane Craig and James Sinclair; that the laws of physics are designed, Robin Collins; that our planet is uniquely designed, Guillermo Gonzalez and J.W. Richards; that chemistry as we know it is designed for life, Michael Denton, Benjamin Weicker, and Jonathan Witt; that the building blocks of living things cannot be found by blind searches but must be designed, Douglas Axe; that the first living creature and the fossil record give evidence of design, Stephen Meyer; and that both macro and micro features of living things give evidence of intelligent design, Michael Denton, Michael Behe. Note 3 quick things about these arguments. First, contrary to stereotypes, these arguments are not God of the gaps arguments. None of these arguments claims, I don't know what caused this, so God must have done it. Rather, the standard mode of argumentation for design proponents is an inference to the best explanation, a common form of reasoning in general and in the historical sciences, like evolutionary biology, in particular. They argue that there are positive signs of intentional design in nature, and that non-intentional explanations are weak by comparison. This is highly consonant with the Catholic faith. The scriptures, for example, Psalm 19 and Romans chapter 1, the Church Fathers, for example, St. Gregory of Nazianzus, and the councils, for example, Vatican I, all declare that God's handiwork in nature is detectable by human reason, and not just by faith. Second, detecting design does not entail that we have detected divine intervention in nature. Design can be detected whether or not there was any direct action. One can tell that a field of corn was intentionally planted, even if intermediate causes such as drones were used to plant the seeds. Similarly, design arguments need not imply unmediated divine action. More on this to come. Third, these arguments have clear theological implications, but ID proponents attempt to stick to the publicly available scientific evidence and do not argue from religious texts. Most intelligent design proponents are Christians, but an argument that the designer is the Christian God would require more than just the scientific evidence. ID proponents are not being coy about their belief in God, but being careful about their conclusions. Aquinas does the same thing. What intelligent design isn't. Many Catholic intellectuals labor under the false impression that intelligent design theorists propose a false dilemma. Either there is an intelligent designer, or else natural laws are responsible for these designed-looking features of our world, as though God cannot be responsible for the natural laws themselves, or that natural causes cannot be instruments of God, that is, secondary causes. This would indeed be an unfortunate dilemma. Fortunately, this is a misunderstanding. ID does not imply a zero-sum game where God is responsible for something, then he must act directly And nature cannot be a true cause as well. Rather, the minimal claim is only that some features of our world.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?